If you're a high-achieving woman who's exhausted by stress, stuck in constant conflict, and tired of being overlooked in the exact rooms where you know you were born to lead, then this podcast is for you. So here's your host, Pallavi Jain.
I want you to close your eyes and imagine holding a bright yellow lemon. Visualize cutting it open and juice squirting out, the citrusy smell rising. And now imagine taking a big bite and clenching it under your teeth. The sour juice gushing in your mouth. Did you feel it? More saliva in your mouth, and some of you even squeezed your eyes, just like I did. Well, that's how powerful the connection between thought and body is. There's no lemon in your mouth, just a thought. Yet your body released chemicals, enzymes, saliva, as if it were real. Every thought you think have a chemical effect in your body, whether you're conscious of it or not. Remember this line because it's going to be the heartbeat of today's episode. Thoughts aren't just in your head. They're in your bloodstream. Welcome, my friends, to Her Boss Brain podcast. I am Pallavi Jain, TEDx speaker and leadership coach, helping women leaders just like you shift from stress to success. We're going to talk about our thoughts today that hold us back more than we would want to know or admit to, thus impacting our confidence, inner calm, and ultimately our success as a leader. Think back to a time you had to speak in front of a big group. Just the thought of walking on stage, all eyes on you, everybody watching you, your heart probably started racing. Your palms got sweaty. And here's the truth. Your brain doesn't know the difference, real or imagined. Neurochemically, it's the same. Those stress hormones, when they flood, your body going into fight or flight mode. You were safe sitting in this chair, but your body couldn't tell the difference between the thought of danger and actual danger. And if you think that just about stage fright, it's only applicable to that, let's go deeper into how this works across the thousands of thoughts you think every single day. And yes, you have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts in your day. And 70% of those thoughts are repetitive thoughts. You have been thinking for weeks, months, sometimes for years. Now imagine if those thoughts are negative, like anger, resentment, fear, anxiety, which activates your stress response on a continuous basis, what effect it will have on your body. There was research conducted by Dr. Joe Dispenza in which there were two groups. Group A was asked to practice certain keys on the piano every day for 30 minutes. And Group B was asked to play the same piano keys but only mentally rehearsing them without ever touching the piano keys. 1 week later, Group B performed as good as the Group A. Surprised? Don't be, because your body doesn't know the difference between a real versus an imaginative experience. And especially if this imaginative thought is powered with strong emotion attached to it, it has even more profound effect on your body. And here's that line again. Thoughts aren't just in your head. They are in your bloodstream. Your brain and body don't know the difference between having an actual experience in your life or just thinking about the experience. Neurochemically, it's the same. So every thought you think have a chemical effect on your body, whether you're conscious of it or not. Now, because of this, your body is constantly conditioning itself for these similar experiences in the future. In our last episode, we talked about stress addiction, and that is exactly how that happens. Your brain and your body get stuck in this loop, which starts with your brain constantly thinking same negative thoughts, flooding the body with same stress hormones constantly. And then as the body adapts, which it always does, to this new reality, the body starts craving more of these stress hormones, which then further triggers your brain to keep thinking negative thoughts. And you see, you're stuck in the same loop. And this is why it becomes impossible to get out of this addictive thinking, which creates fear, anxiety for things that has not even happened. Let us take an example, okay? Think of a recent situation that made you angry at home or at work. Take a second and think about something that made you angry. Anything, it doesn't matter. Okay, I hope all of you have that situation in mind. And so you had this episode, either it's with somebody that made you angry, or you were upset with this person for a few hours, or sometimes even for multiple days, right? Now I want you to examine this anger, and I want you to check if your anger was constant throughout this time you were angry. Did you stay angry at the same level for the entire time? The answer is probably no. Basically, what happened was the anger kept going more at certain points. Then you will calm down a little bit, and then again, you'll get really angry. True? Basically, if you look deeper now, you will find yourself constantly feeding the anger by retelling one or more stories, thoughts about this person or that situation over and over. Your anger calmed down and then stopped thinking about the same thoughts, same stories, and went up. That's the wave. But now, if you then stop telling the stories, thus triggering and repeating the same thoughts, you may find anger dissipating for the lack of fuel. Basically, this anger monster needs to feed on your angry stories. And we have the power to stop these same stories and thoughts that have been ruling our brain for so long. And that is what real empowerment is. That is what it means to activate your boss brain, to be in control, and to be on self-start. Can you see? So far, we have looked at how this inner science is trapping us and how our thoughts are ruling our life. But what happens when we flip the script and we use the same science to our advantage at work? So let's pivot, okay? Now we know that our thoughts are powerful and that every thought has an impact on our body neurochemically, and that our body doesn't know the difference between a real experience versus an imaginative one. So, how can we pivot and use this inner technology to our benefit? I mean, do you see how cool and powerful the science is that we hold inside us? If we can use this constructively, let me show you how. So, thoughts have physical effect on your body. So, why can't we use repetitive positive thoughts now to replenish our body, get prepared for a future event, or even feel more love and joy within? Do you think it's possible? What do you think? Here's a workplace story that shows exactly how. In one of my Lead from Within workshops that I do for organizations, there was a senior executive. Let's call her Anna. She came in carrying this constant stress about presenting to the board. And she told me that, every time she had a board meeting coming up, she'd lose sleep, she'll get really stressed for several days in advance. And by the time she was in the room, she was already in fight or flight mode. Now, when we talked about how the brain doesn't distinguish between a thought and a reality, something clicked for her. I guided her through a short exercise where instead of rehearsing disaster in her head, she closed her eyes and she visualized herself walking into the boardroom calmly, shoulders relaxed, hearing her voice come out strong and steady, seeing even the board members nodding as she presented. The fascinating part was that her body started to calm down right there. You could literally see the shift in her breathing. And that's exactly what happened. 2 weeks later, after the workshop, she emailed me and she says, for the first time, I went into the board meeting not feeling like I was under attack. I actually felt I belonged there. And here's the impact. Once she wasn't hijacked by stress and worry, she could actually think clearly, respond strategically. And she told me she even enjoyed the discussion. How about that? That's the power of this inner science. When you realize your thoughts are chemicals, you can prime yourself for leadership instead of letting fear run the show. And by the way, if you're wondering whether this works outside the boardroom, it does. You've probably even experienced yourself. Well, many of you may have experienced romantic daydreaming, remembering or imagining being with someone you're attracted to. Just thinking of them sending you a text can make your stomach flutter. Dopamine, oxytocin release, you may feel warmth in your chest. Your body experiences these love chemicals without the person physically present. Doesn't it happen? And athletes, they have mastered this science, really. Athletes use this science all the time with visualizing their skill and actually mentally rehearsing. Olympic skiers mentally rehearse every twist and turn before they race. Their brain scans show their motor cortex, basically the automatic motor movement, part of your brain responsible for automatic motor movement, the one you use to ride a bike effortlessly without thinking, right? So that motor cortex would lit up in the brain scan almost identically to when they're actually physically skiing. The brain doesn't fully separate imagination from action, and which is why visualization improves real performance. So use that. So here are some ways to flip this insight that we have learned into workplace advantages, just like Anna did. I want you to shift from this stress chemistry to success chemistry. So whether it's a tough meeting, it's a critical feedback coming up, or even the anticipation of conflict could trigger stress hormones. So how to use the science that we have learned? Basically, before walking into that meeting, rehearse a different script in your head. Visualize yourself calm, confident, already having navigated the conversation successfully. What will happen is your body will release feel good hormones like dopamine and serotonin. You literally show up with a steadier voice and clearer thinking. You have an important presentation coming up. Do a mental movie of your presentation. See the audience nodding. Feel yourself speaking with clarity. Your nervous system doesn't know it's a rehearsal. So when the real thing happens or comes, it feels familiar instead of threatening. And now comes the most important one that we all grapple with: tough conversations. Do you know? 85% of employees say they experience conflict at work on a constant basis. Unfortunately, it is part and parcel of a modern day crazy lifestyle, which is exactly what happens when everyone is running on empty, by the way. So, now what to do about that? I want you to remember one thing that I told you before. So, in a tough conversation, half of the battle will be won if you enter a tough conversation without your clouded perception, which impacts how you show up for people around you. This is the concept I taught, and we talked about it in our episode 4. So, if you have not watched episode 4, I would highly recommend watching that, where we talk about how your inner dialogue and things that are happening inside you creates a clouded perception, and you don't show up in the present moment and don't see things as they are. So, half of your battle in the conflicting situation, especially because you are in that fight or flight mode, half of the battle is won by understanding and coming into the conversation without a clouded perception. And then the other half is won if you could stop your inner thoughts' negative spiral, which activates the stress response in that moment of conflict, thus making it really challenging to have a meaningful or triggerless conversation. A single sideway comment spins into, my boss hates me, my job isn't safe, what if I fail, they're going to fire me. You see, each thought layers stress chemicals into the bloodstream. So apply the ATM, catch the spiral early. and replace the negative thought with one grounding thought. This is their perception. This may not be the reality. Let me get curious and find more. That calms the amygdala, reopens your prefrontal cortex, takes away the blame, and allows for better problem solving. Let me share another real workplace example so you can see how this works. So I did a session for all managers and directors for a hotel chain last year. And in one of my sessions, a middle manager, Paul, he admitted something really honest. He said, every time I get constructive feedback from my VP, my mind immediately goes, I'm failing, I'm not cut out for this, maybe I'm not leadership material. What's happening there? His thoughts were triggering the same chemical storm in his body as if his job was literally at risk in that moment. Now, with his emotional center all lit up and his brain's higher level functions, that part that does problem solving and strategic thinking, basically shuts down. So instead of hearing the feedback, understanding the issue, he was actually fighting off an imaginary threat. But after he learned this concept in the session of catching that spiral early, he reframed his inner thought to this is feedback, this is data, not a death sentence. And I received a note from him a couple months later that the next time his VP gave him a tough critique, well, his heart still started pounding at first, but he repeated the new thought. And within seconds, his body calmed and he was able to ask smart follow-up questions instead of shutting down. His VP later told him, I can see you're really growing into this role. That shift wasn't about him suddenly becoming smarter. It was about learning to stop self-sabotaging through thoughts that created the wrong chemistry in his body. And once he changed the thought, the chemistry changed, and so did his leadership presence. So your call to action for this week: master your thoughts to master your life. Today you have seen how every single thought creates chemistry in your body. Negative thoughts flood you with stress hormones and keep you stuck. Positive, intentional thoughts can release dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, each of these hormones shifting you into confidence, clarity, joy, and calm. Now, if you want to master your leadership, your relationships, your results, it starts with mastering your thoughts. Make it a daily practice to catch the old patterns and pivot into new ones. Script your state before a meeting, a conversation, or even your day. The more you practice, the more your brain rewires itself for resilience, success, and joy. And remember again, your thoughts aren't just in your head, they are in your bloodstream. Choose them wisely, and they'll shape the leader and the life you become. If today's episode resonated and you'd like me to bring this conversation into your company or leadership team, let's connect. You can find me at pallavi-jain.com. Check out the show notes where you can find my contact information as well. Remember, master your thoughts to master your life. Your power lives within. Activate your boss brain and be on self-start. Take care, everyone.
So that's it for today's episode of our Boss Brain podcast. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will win a chance in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private VIP day with Pallavi herself. Be sure to head on over to her bossbrainpodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Pallavi's gift and join us next time.